understood that below the engine we'll probably find the...
How do you know whose stuff this is? Shift the power! Shift the power!
Welcome back. You're watching I24 News. We're coming to you live from Tel Aviv, and some relief tonight in Israel because 14 Israeli citizens are back in Israel after being held by terrorists in Gaza for 6 weeks. President Biden is speaking about that now. Let's listen.
Who need help and to facilitate release of hostages. And we know that innocent children in Gaza are suffering greatly as well because this war that Hamas has unleashed has such consequences. Thousands have been killed, and from the earliest days of this crisis, I've worked closely with President Sisi of Egypt, the Israeli government, King Abdullah of Jordan, and leaders throughout the region to expand the delivery of critical humanitarian assistance to help innocent Palestinians in need who are not part of Hamas. Under this deal, fighting in Gaza has now been paused for 3 days. Over that time, 58 hostages have been released, including the Thai, Filipino, and Russian nationals. Dozens of families have been reunited. And we worked urgently to take advantage of the pause to surge aid into Gaza. We've moved approximately 200 aid trucks into Gaza each day, loaded with food, water, medicine, fuel, and cooking gas. More is needed, but this deal is delivering life-saving results. Critically needed aid is going in, and hostages are coming out. And this deal is structured so that it can be extended, to keep building on these results. That's my goal. That's our goal, to keep this pause going beyond tomorrow so that we can continue to see more hostages come out and surge more humanitarian relief into those who are in need in Gaza. We've seen this is the day-by-day approach, hour-by-hour process. Nothing is guaranteed, and nothing is being taken for granted. But the proof that this is working and worth pursuing further is in every smile and every grateful tear we see on the faces of those families who are finally getting back together again. And the proof is little Abigail. More than 20 other children, 18 years and younger, have been released. They've been released through this deal as well. They've endured a terrible ordeal, and they can now begin the long journey toward healing. And I'm going to continue working with the Emir of Qatar, President Sisi of Egypt, and Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel to do everything possible to see the hostages are freed, all the hostages. I'm grateful for the personal partnership as we pursue this deal from each of those men I just mentioned. And as we've worked together to see all this implemented, and now to try to extend it further. I'll continue working with all our partners to take the hard but necessary steps to build an integrated and more prosperous and more peaceful future in the region. A two-state solution is the only way to guarantee the long-term security of both Israelis and Palestinian people. To make sure Israel and Palestinians alike live in equal measure of freedom and dignity. We'll not give up on working toward that goal. So thank you very much. But thank God she's home. The little, I just can't imagine the enjoyment and I wish I were there to hold her.
Mr. President, do you have an update on the other Americans who are being held and any sense as to when they would be released?
We are hopeful, but I don't have anything firmly to tell you at this moment.
Sir, do you expect that if you are able to use this momentum to extend the pause, have you extracted any guarantees about proof of life for other hostages, or do you have an expectation of how much longer you could push this pause?
Well, look, you know the deal calls for every 10 hostages released to extend another day. So I'm hopeful this is not the end. It's going to continue, but we don't know. And but I get a sense that all the players in the region, even the neighbors who aren't and have been directly involved now, we're looking for a way to end this so the hostages are all released and Hamas is completely, how can I say it, no longer in control of any portion of Gaza.
And do they have control of all of the hostages, or are there still other militant groups that you have to deal with?
We think there are probably other militant groups, but we're not certain.
Mr. President, how is Abigail doing? What's her physical condition? Do you have any information?
I haven't gotten that information. I just wanted to let you know immediately. They were going across into Egypt, as you recall. That was the route. But an older, non-American, elderly woman is very sick and was in need of immediate medical help. So they arranged to cross directly into Israel to be able to take her to a hospital. All I know is that she has been held. I don't know. I haven't seen a photograph. I've just been in communication with my team. But she is safely ensconced in Israel. But there's a lot more work to be done.
How many days would you like to see the pause go on for?
I would like to see us move to a point where we were able to well, let me put it this way. I'd like to see the pause go on as long as prisoners kept coming out. All right, thank you all so very much. I know, we have to call you. I know you say, what's he calling me with only 10 minutes or so notice? I said, that's the notice I get, because we didn't know. I didn't want to be having this press conference if they weren't physically, even when they were in the Red Cross ambulance, I didn't want to do it because they were not out. They were still in Gaza. So I don't thank you enough, but thanks for your patience. And I know it's...
We're here anytime, sir.
All right. Jill, I thank...
Happy holidays.
Okay, happy holidays to you guys.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, sir.
Oh, there we are. Smile from President Biden there. Thank God she's home. That's what he had to say about Abigail Idan. She's just turned 4 and she is now back in Israel. One of the hostages, Abigail, holds Israeli and American citizenship. She's now back home. Tragically, she won't be reunited with her parents. Both of her parents were murdered by Hamas terrorists. Her brother and sister are alive, and she will be taken to one of the 3 hospitals in Israel tonight. Well, our Zach Andrews is in southern Israel with the latest. Zach, what's happening?
We're south of Afikim, and we're expecting that young American hostage that was released to travel on this road behind me with about a dozen other hostages. You can see the crowd has turned into, it's become somewhat of an event. This is Israeli patriotism on display as roughly 100 people have stood out on the side of the road. They're anticipating the arrival of these hostages inside a convoy that's going to be heavily guarded by special forces on this journey to Hatzerim Air Base, where they will then board helicopters. After a brief rest, they're going to get the chance for a shower and a change of clothes, and then they'll board those helicopters and fly north towards your direction in Tel Aviv and finally get the chance to reunite with their families. But before they do so, these people are going to give them a nice send-off and their well wishes.
Wow, a warm welcome indeed. And the whole country has just been praying for little Abigail, haven't they?
I can tell you the emotions here. Every single car that drives by blows its horn. All of the eyes across the road, the young and the old, they're all filled with tears. People are so emotional right now. Just the chance. They're not going to get a very good view of the people inside the vehicles. I don't think they really need that. They just want a moment. They just want themselves to be seen so that these hostages, as they drive past, know how much they're loved.
Incredible and wonderful to see, and indeed so different to what we saw with the other hostages being released in those Red Cross vans from Gaza, and we saw them being jeered, stones thrown at them in some cases. This is going to be such a relief for their eyes, isn't it?
A huge relief, and that convoy we're expecting should be here in any moment. This is just one part of the journey, right? It's going to be quite a long ways till they reach you, but for now they're supposedly moments away.
All right, Zach, thank you very much. Zach Andrews there. Lots of Israelis have turned out to welcome the hostages home because they are now back in Israel. There we are. We can see Daphna. That's 15-year-old Daphna Eliakim, her and her sister Ella. There we are. Wow, what a sight that will be for her mother Mayan, who's just been through absolute torture over the past 6 weeks. Daphna's coming home with her little sister Ella. Wow, that just gives us all chills, doesn't it, to see that. These children, we feel like we know them so well. Who's that we can see? We can see little boy. Is that Tal? I'm not sure.
That might be Tal Goldstein.
Might be Tal Goldstein. All these children, they were kidnapped from their homes, tragically had family members murdered. We don't know what kind of violence they've witnessed. We don't know how they've been treated by terrorists in Gaza. But the good news is they are now home. They are in Israel, and they will be reunited with whatever family members they have left. That is
so moving. These rare moments of joy. I think the whole state of Israel really needs that after the national trauma that we've gone through on that October 7th. After all the agony, all the suffering, to see some relief, some joy for the families, but really it's a national joy. To see some families being reunited, some small children returning to their homes safely after being captured by these animals. It's extremely moving for every Israeli, and I think everyone that watches these images right now.
Okay, well, let's see some more scenes, I suspect, of celebration. Emily Francis is with some of the families and their supporters. Emily, some rare good news. Those kids, those Israeli citizens, they're back in Israel tonight.
It is such good news and such heartwarming news. And you can really see, last night there were thousands and thousands of people here. Tonight, much more subdued because everybody is glued to the television and watching this miracle unfold before our very eyes of the hostages that are now returning home. A little bit more information about some of the hostages that are being returned. I do want to mention, Yotam Chaim, who I've interviewed his mother, Iris Chaim, not too long ago, who suffers from anxiety. He's in a heavy metal band, and he is amongst the returnees. Obviously, the Brodet's family, Hagar, Ofri, Yuval, Oria from Kfar Aza, as well as Avichai, husband and father, was defending the kibbutz as his family was taken hostage. Obviously, we're all talking about Avigail Idan, who just tragically lost both of her parents, not even aware that she lost her parents. So obviously, this is going to touch on a lot of people's heartstrings. Not only is she coming home, but also having to come home and having to face another trauma. So the list goes on and on of these amazing people that the whole world, not only in Israel, but the whole world has been praying for. You can see there are still people here. There have been prayer circles throughout the night, singing, people really hanging out, trying to lend support, but a more subdued environment, as like you said, and like we're seeing all these images unfolding, and a great big homecoming. But again, let's not forget, we still have well over 100 hostages, men that have not been released, that we're all praying for. So of course it's exciting, but it's also bittersweet because we cannot forget the rest of the hostages that are still in Gaza at this time.
And another rare note of good news, a rare positive here, Emily, is that this time no families have been broken up.
Thank goodness, because we know, the hope was just mixed with trauma yesterday after hours and hours of delays, thinking that it wouldn't happen, and then to take people away from their families was just heart-wrenching. So at least there's a little bit of a reprieve, and families have been kept together this evening.
And of course, we have to remember that many families will not be seeing their loved ones tonight or indeed tomorrow. Lots of people will remain in captivity, we don't know when they'll be home.
Yeah. That's right. We just have to keep praying that we will get all the hostages home. We know that the spirit here in Israel is not going to give up till every hostage comes home.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Emily. Emily Francis there. Well, all of the hostages will be taken straight to medical facilities across the country. Of course, they've been through a very traumatic ordeal. We're talking about young children and elderly people as well. Our Pia Steckelbach is at one of the hospitals, the Schneider Children's Hospital. And Pia, staff on alert there, waiting for the children to arrive.
Right, Laurie. Well, they've been preparing for quite a while to receive those hostages, at least part of them tonight. We do know that the hostages are in the hands of the Israeli army, which means that they are now in Israel. And the last leg of their journey out from Gaza on the way back home is to be transported via helicopters to those hospitals that have been chosen to receive them. We do speak about Schneider Medical Center, where we're at right now, also the Sheba Hospital, and also Wolfson Hospitals. Those are the three hospitals that will receive those hostages. But we do also hear that one elderly woman who is critically injured has already been brought to Soroka Medical Center in Beersheba, which is located in the south of Israel, because she is being treated there right now. Once those hostages arrive here to Schneider and those two other hospitals here in the center of Israel, they will of course be receiving also medical treatment, both physically and also psychologically. And this will also be the place where they will see their families for the first time. The families have of course been notified. They have been asked to come to those hospitals, and this is where they will see their loved ones for the first time again after 7 weeks. And as you can see here behind me, the hospital team has already been setting up an area where later those who have been treating or who will be treating those hostages will speak to the press about their condition. What we've been hearing from, for example, the first round of hostages that was released on Friday and has also been brought, or many of them have been brought to Schneider Medical Center, is that those who were here on Friday, they were all in a good, at least physical condition. But of course, Laurie, do speak about 7 weeks of captivity. We do speak about severe and serious trauma, and therefore they will be received there by medical doctors, but of course also by a team of experts in psychology, psychiatry, especially when we speak about children who might not have even grasped what have happened to them. We do need to be, of course, very, very careful and very, very sensitive. What we've been hearing from also other hospitals is that it is very important to go according to their pace, to speak to them in their pace, and to let them open up in the pace that they put forward. Now, here in the Schneider Medical Center, everything is prepared, and we are waiting for that helicopter to take off and to arrive to the hospital here. There are also many journalists waiting, but we do not really expect to see the families or the hostages themselves, because, again, this is a very, very obviously sensitive issue. Privacy is very, very important. So we do not really expect to see the hostages or the families here, but the families are arriving now, and so will the hostages do as well. We are speaking about a matter of hours only. We're waiting for that helicopter to depart from southern Israel to really arrive here. This is, again, one of only 3 hospitals that will be receiving the hostages. Soroka Medical Center in the south has already received one critically injured elderly woman from that round of hostages that were released just now. And here everyone is really waiting for them to come, including, of course, the families who are waiting here behind the closed, of course, doors to receive their loved ones again after 7 incredibly tense weeks. And the tension isn't over yet, because what we've been also hearing from families in recent weeks is that they will be relieved only once their loved ones are really back and once they can actually really hug them, which is only a matter of hours, as we believe right now.
All right, Pia, thank you very much. Pia Steckelbach, she's at the Schneider Children's Hospital, where medical staff are on alert, waiting for the helicopter to bring the now freed hostages to them for medical treatment. 14 Israeli citizens back in Israel tonight, including 9 children. All right, well, with us now, Rami Igra. He's the former head of the Mossad's Missing in Action unit. Rami, thanks for being with us. Some rare good news then. Your reaction to the fact that 9 children back in Israel tonight, 14 Israeli citizens in total.
Yes, very good news, but we should all remember the price that Israel is paying for this good news. Israel, at the end of the game, must eradicate the Hamas. We can't continue living with a Hamas. And if tomorrow we don't get any more, if the day after tomorrow there are no more hostages released, we'll go back, I hope, we'll go back into fighting. And I would imagine at the end of the day, the more we pressure the Hamas, the closer we are to Sinwar's neck, the more hostages we will see, and the more releases we will see, rescues we will see from them.
So Hamas has reneged on some parts of the deal already, hasn't it? It hasn't allowed the Red Cross to access the remaining hostages, nor has it kept family members together. We saw yesterday, for example, a mother and a daughter separated and a brother and a sister. I mean, does Israel have any leverage at all when it comes to stopping them from doing that again?
I don't think that really that Hamas reneged on the deal with the vis-a-vis the question of the Red Cross. I heard Netanyahu saying it's part of the deal. I know the Hamas. There is no way Hamas would agree to that. It's not in their resume. They don't let the Red Cross go anywhere. And imagine they would. This would open a possibility for Israel to find these hostages and try to rescue them via military means. What they have done is they haven't stuck to the deal vis-a-vis the question of families and connecting mothers and daughters, etc., etc. And they're saying, and that could be right, that they don't know where the other part of the family is. Because they don't have all the hostages. They have some of the hostages, most of the hostages. Some are with the jihad, and some are with families with the crime or mafia kind of families in the Gaza Strip.
Well, Hila, one of the hostages, Hila Rotem, who's 12, she says that she was with her mother until 2 days ago, and they were separated. So do you think this is all part of the psychological warfare that Hamas is deploying against Israel?
Hamas is deploying a psychological warfare against Israel. It's trying to show the neighborhood, the Middle East, that even though it was hit very hard, they're winning the war. They are manipulating Israel and not the other way. And if you consider all the things that they have done, they're not far from the truth. Now, imagine one of the things that is happening, and none of us are really focusing on, is the fact that every day we release somewhat 40 criminals or murderers to be to the West Bank.
No murderers have been released. No murderers are being freed as part of the deal.
I said murderers to be.
Yeah.
I didn't say people with blood in their heads. People who will be or tried to be or were on the way. And these people are raising the support for the Hamas in the West Bank. And that you can see from what happened yesterday in Tulkarem, where they executed 2 Palestinians for what they think is helping Israel, and in a very brutal way. They're manipulating us, and this is all because of Israeli public sentiment to have the hostages as soon as possible back home.
Well, are you worried about that? Do you think that we should be concerned about that? Are we likely to see a spate of terrorist attacks, attempted terrorist attacks in Jerusalem and the West Bank?
Yes, this is another front. We have 2 fronts today, the Hezbollah and the Hamas. And the West Bank, we are not listening to what's happening there, but there's a lot of turmoil in the West Bank. Daily skirmishes between the Israeli Defense Forces and Hamas operatives, and this might spur into a much larger thing that we all should be worried about. This is part of the deal. Now, I want to say one more thing. Now, remember, go back to the Gilad Shalit deal. Mm-hmm. We released in the Gilad Shalit the murderers that executed the 7th of October. And by releasing these people today to the West Bank, God knows who we're releasing in the future. God knows if we're not going to see the same people in 5, 7 years.
Do you think there's a difference though? Because this time, I mean, I know they have attempted terrorist attacks, or have in some cases actually gone ahead and stabbed people or attempted bombings. But are they the same caliber as the hardened murderers and terrorists that we saw released back in 2011 in exchange for Gilad Shalit?
Well, you never know. You never know. And one thing that we've learned on the 7th of October is that you can't feed the dragon and make him docile. At the end of the day, the dragon does not change his nature, and the nature comes out. And one of the things that we should all worry about is these releases and future releases that might come around when they want to release, let's say, soldiers that are hostages today in the Hamas's hand. The answer to all of this, in my mind, is continuing the eradication of the Hamas. This is the real answer to this problem. At the end of the day, we can't have the Hamas or the Hezbollah or any such organization on our border like no other country can have. And because of that, once we achieve that, you will see a release of everyone. In my mind, this deal, as happy as it is for everyone in Israel, is a premature deal. If we waited several more weeks, we would have seen a different deal. Look at what they've done today. Today they have released our hostages in Gaza City. Gaza City is occupied by the Israeli army, and nonetheless, with their chutzpah, they release the hostages there in order to show the Arab world that they're there, they're continuing fighting, and nothing has happened to them.
I see. So you think that's a strategy to show that they are still in control, despite the fact that the IDF says it is in control?
Yes.
Okay.
And I've done this. I mean, if you were watching Al Jazeera this evening, you would have thought that nothing happened to Gaza City, and in reality, Gaza City is no more.
All right, Rami Igra, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Rami Igra, he's the former head of the Mossad's Missing in Action unit. So just to update you then, 14 Israeli citizens, they're back in Israel tonight on their way to hospital as we speak. 9 children among them. An elderly lady, Elma, she's been taken ill and has had to go, Elma Abraham, that's her name, she's had to go for medical treatment quickly. Guy.
Again, extremely moving to see those images. Going back to President Biden, speaking about Abigail, saying, "I wish I was there to hold her." We can only imagine whether there was someone to hold her there for over 50 days. This orphan, this 4-year-old orphan, alone in Gaza. It's unimaginable. We do hope that one of the elderly, one of the mothers was there, and she was not by herself in captivity. It's just
right, because
unimaginable.
she was with the Brodets family, right? They have 3 kids: 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 9-year-old, and Abigail was actually with them, wasn't she, at the time?
But we don't know in captivity how would they divide it, and obviously that's. Heart-wrenching to just imagine that situation. We also saw the sisters, Ella and Daphna Eliakim, also, who had to view their family members being murdered in front of their eyes, whether they even have had any time to understand what happened to them, to their family, to mourn.
That was Tomer, right? He was the teenage boy who they used to lure out families from their homes, and then Tomer was murdered as well. And they saw that, the girls. So we don't know what they've seen.
So many tragedies there. But going back to Biden, and I think some important things that he said there.
He couldn't keep the smile off his face, could he?
I think that was a special effort, and I hope I really do believe that while poor Abigail and her brothers are orphaned, that the world will take care of them. I think it's beautiful to see that.
Look at this guy, because any minute now the convoy is 2 minutes away. A convoy of vehicles carrying the 14 hostages, 13, because the Israeli-Russian citizen has gone with the Thai citizens via Rafah. These 13, all women and children, they came through the Karni crossing. So we can see well-wishers on the side of the road. Zach, are you there?
I am, and I believe that we are either seeing the anticipatory first round of vehicles. Yeah, this is just a few of the part of the security detail, and we have source ahead of us that says they're still on their way. So they've cleared the road somewhat, and we're still anticipating that they're just a few moments away.
They're coming down the highway, aren't they? We can see lots of well-wishers. More people have gathered with their Israeli flags. Everybody wants to be there to welcome the hostages home. 13 Israeli women and children on their way home. They're going to get in a helicopter and be taken straight to one of 3 hospitals in central Israel, where they will receive immediate medical treatment. But there we can see people just want to be there, don't they, Zach? They want to be part of this, and they want the hostages to have a warm welcome.
And we've spoken to a few of them, and that's really all that they're here for, is just to show the love. We're seeing some more. This is going to be a procession of several special forces vehicles. I believe that's what you're seeing now. Or potentially just some more military equipment. Yeah, that looks like just some more heavy equipment. Have no real word. They obviously they want to secure this route, so they haven't released the details or shared any sort of information as to when they're coming. But I'm sure you can hear the traffic. Just about every car that comes by blows their horn. The people across the road, they're playing music. There's a lot of children, and it strikes you how many children across the road in this community that on October 7th was under threat. They were under fire. These children that are out there waving flags and anticipating this moment very well could be one of the kids in the van that they're about to drive past. It's so remarkable.
It really is. This is, this is Israeli history in the making, isn't it? Everybody will remember where they were on this day when these latest hostages were freed. Who knows what they have been through in the past 6-7 weeks, held by terrorist groups in Gaza after witnessing unimaginable scenes of cruelty and violence in their homes that Saturday morning, that Shabbat on October 7th. When they awoke to find thousands of Hamas terrorists had breached the border and made their way into Israel, savagely massacring civilians, families, all sorts of atrocities committed against those innocent people throughout the day. But now some relief for Israel, because some of the hostages, 13 women and children, in a convoy set to drive past any moment now. Among them, young Abigail Moridan. She just turned 4. She's an orphan. Both her parents were murdered. Here we go. Here's the convoy coming now, I believe.
It does appear
there we go, Zach.
This is the convoy.
Here we go.
It does appear to be the convoy, yes.
Slowing down as they make their way.
Wonderful scenes.
And here's some of the vans now. This appears to be them.
Here are the hostages. They are free. They are home. There we go. 4 minivans. Inside those minivans, 13 Israeli women and children. Daphna's home, Ella's home, Agam is home, Gal is home, Tal is home, Ofri, Yuval, Uriah, they're home. And we hope many, many more will join them. But for now, these are the people who are back in Israel. They have suffered unspeakably over the past few weeks, but tonight their recovery begins. They will be taken to hospital. They'll have medical treatment. They will be reunited with the family members who are still with us. Wonderful scenes. Much needed. Guy Azriel's with me in the studio. And I just wanted to point out the difference with the Red Cross, okay? Because the Red Cross seem to be parading them around like trophies, everybody looking in the windows. You can see this is much more dignified, isn't it, with the
These are
convoy.
regular Israelis who heard that the hostages are on their way and wanted to show them some love after what they've been through, to be the first smiley faces that they encounter. Really just a glimpse of the amount of love that these people will be getting in the coming days. I'll tell you another story that is just really again just miraculous story. One of the Israeli ministers spoke today, Ariel Busso, and he says that he met yesterday with Adina Moshe. She's one of the first hostages.
Oh, she's the lady who slapped away the terrorist's hand as she got over the bus. We all know Adina.
Was released, 72 years old. And listen to this story, because when he met her, she told him about the story of her release. And actually, when the Hamas terrorists told her that she's going on the van and she's about to be released, she argued. She said, "I'm not going on. I'm not leaving. There's an older woman here in a much more serious state. Take her, leave me here.
My God.
I want to stay so that she can go."
Wait a minute, who are we looking at here? Looking at some of the families at one of the hospitals.
Wow, okay.
That is the Israeli-Russian citizen who's going with the Thai hostages. He went via the Rafah crossing. Ronnie, he's called. He was taken from the Ronnie Koboy. He was taken from the Nova Music Festival. He was kidnapped from Reim. And you were pointing out, Guy, that it's interesting to note the differences, because he was being held in the south, and gives us a clue perhaps about where the others
not just the significance of Hamas showing that it has presence in the central part of the Gaza Strip. We see that hostages that were taken from the south, from Kibbutz Be'eri, from near Oz, in the Ashkol region, were released through the Rafah crossing in the southern tip of the Gaza Strip, while these hostages that were taken from Nachal Oz, much more to the north, are being released in a similar area. Just shows that not all the hostages have been taken to the southern part of the Gaza Strip. It is still possible that others are in areas close to where the IDF is, and that is, I think, interesting and reassuring, perhaps, for the Israeli officials.
Avi Pasner is with us, former ambassador to France and Italy. Wonderful to see you. We have some rare good news tonight. Daphne and Anna are home. Lots of other children are home. 9 children free tonight in Israel.
You know, it is such an emotional moment when you see those children and also evidently the adults. You know, the waiting is of a people. A whole people is waiting here. It's incredible. You know, the Jewish solidarity is such, you know, that I feel very close. I don't know these people. I feel very close to them, as though I know them, you know. And I hope that we will be able to take out many more. I mean, whatever number we can take out, we should take out, even if it costs us a day or 2 or 3 of truce before we begin our operation.
You think that the truce should be extended? Because I've been speaking to some military men, and they say the opposite. They say, no, we've got to get back on with the job. We have to destroy Hamas, because the only reason they'll release hostages is if they're under pressure, if the knife is at their neck. That's how
I think that if we can liberate more hostages, and that the price we have to pay is some days, 2, 3, 4 days of truce, this is worth paying. We can always resume operation. It doesn't make a difference if it is after 4 days or 7 days.
And this is exactly what we heard from President Biden just a short while ago. He wants to extend this pause, but he certainly used that phrase pause and not a ceasefire, to extend it for as long as more hostages can be released. And this is exactly with the same line of Israel. A day of pause for each 10 hostages that are being released, also reiterating that Hamas must not be able to control Gaza. And that is extremely important, hearing that from Biden. And we speak about those happy images. I still want to, at this very moment, to remind our viewers of little baby Kfir Bibas, 10 months old Kfir Bibas, the youngest Israeli to be taken by Hamas on that October 7th. 10 months old baby, he's still there. And we will not forget that. We will not we'll not forget him until he's being released. He's there. Here we are.
There he is, and he's with his big brother Ariel and his mother and his father. And we know, tragically, the father will not be released. The mother and the two children, we hope, will be released, but the father will not be considered for release. What a tragedy!
I think that the Hamas is holding this very famous baby on purpose.
Until the last minute.
I think so, and maybe to ask a higher price for it, because the image is such that every Israeli knows this baby.
I think he's known around the world, isn't he?
Around the world. So maybe that for the Hamas, it's a higher price to pay. Who knows?
And we know in this propaganda game that Hamas is playing, they're also trying to bizarrely pass themselves off as having taken good care of the hostages. We've seen these sickening propaganda videos where they're literally telling released captives, wave, keep waving, smile. It's important to them. Who are they talking to with that?
Yeah, they try to rebuild their image, especially in the Western world. I mean, I think that we have succeeded very much in presenting them as what they are, a terrorist organization, a cruel terrorist organization without any scruple. And they are now trying by those images. For example, I saw this Hamas terrorist carrying an old lady, as though if he cares about. I mean, it's ridiculous. He may have killed her husband. The same terrorist may have killed her husband. I mean, we have to know who we are facing. We are facing a cruel terrorist organization that we have to wipe out its leadership. But in due time, I think if we can get hostages, let's get our hostages.
You think take the deal however much it costs?
Not however much.
Not however much it costs.
No. I mean, if it takes a few days of truce, and I also don't use, like Guy, I don't use the word ceasefire. This is not a ceasefire. It's a pause, a truce. If it takes 2, 3, 4 more days to get 40, 50 people out, why not?
I spoke a few days ago with an Israeli official who was part of the negotiating team of Ron Arad, and his message was clear. If you have a chance to get someone out alive, do so. We will deal with the ramifications.
You are so right, Guy. Later. I remember very well the tragedy of Ron Arad. I was in the government then. We missed some opportunities to get Ron Arad. We were not ready to pay the price then to get Ron Arad. And he disappeared.
Of course,
and nobody knows where he is.
Who had to abandon his plane over the skies of Lebanon.
It's history. It's in '86,
Yes, of course.
It's history, but he had to abandon and he was captured by Amal. Amal was then the main Shiite organization before Hezbollah. And we could have gotten him, and we were not ready to pay.
But others would say, Yahya Sinwar was released as part of a deal to release Gilad Shalit. Yahya Sinwar.
In my view, the Shalit release was a mistake. I believe
it was too high a price.
The price was absurd. I mean, it was a big. The price to release 1,027 terrorists with blood on their hand, including the whole leadership of the Hamas. This was a terrible, terrible mistake, and we are paying the price now. So we have to be reasonable in the price we pay to release our hostages.
I think the Shalit deal, first of all, shows the asymmetry between Israel, a democratic state, and that dictatorship of Hamas, a murderous terror group. In Israel, and I'll say this as a member of the media had a major impact on the release of those over 1,000 Palestinian terrorists from Israeli prisons. For that one Israeli soldier, Israeli media has pushed for this deal almost under any circumstances just to get Gilad Shalit out. It was described by all as our son, the son of every one of us. And it's true that Israel does need to do everything possible to bring back...
He was held for several years, wasn't he?
Our boys, yes. And I'll go back to myself. I found my post on Facebook from the day Gilad Shalit was released, and I said that day, well, I'm proud to be Israeli today, and you know what? I do not regret at the time, with what I knew, being proud of that fact, because Israel goes to extreme lengths to bring back its boys, to bring back its captives, its hostages. Yes, in retrospect, it is easy to say the price was too great when we released a psychopath like Yahya Sinwar, who has caused Israel such immense damage.
After saving his life twice.
I think Israel for such a long time have always tried to do the right thing, be the price as it may be also when it came to Gaza.
I think that now the price is reasonable. I think that now when we released 3 terrorists for each hostages, this is a reasonable price. It's a balanced price. It is not 100, it is not 3.
But are you worried when you see scenes coming out of the West Bank, particularly over the weekend in Tulkarm, where Palestinians lynched 2 men they accused of collaborating with Israel? They strung them up on electricity pylons, horrific scenes, and we saw a lot of Hamas flags. We saw a lot of,
you know that they had, Laura, they had a survey in the West Bank. There's more support for the Hamas in the West Bank than there is in Gaza. You know, of course I'm worried, and this is why the IDF every night operates in Judea and Samaria, and we arrest people and we kill terrorists, because if we let things go the way they are going now, then we can face a similar problem. Because let's face the truth, the Palestinian Authority is absolutely unable to deal with the situation. Absolutely unable. We have to do it ourselves, and we are doing it.
Yes, it goes back to a previous point that we mentioned earlier about some voices in the Israeli political field saying very clearly that we just saw over the weekend 2 Palestinians being executed for collaborating allegedly with Israel, and there was a claim by a member of the opposition saying, if this is happening under the rule of the Palestinian Authority, how on earth could we expect them to have a different rule over the Gaza Strip? How are things going to be any different? And it's a valid question.
Yeah, and you know, Guy, in general, I think we have to wait for the day after. We have to wait until we wipe out the control of Hamas from the Gaza Strip. You know, you see, it took us now 50 days to take control of part of the northern part of Gaza. Not of all. You see, for example, the hostages who are liberated now come from the northern part, the part where we are in. So it will take time, and I think it will take...
And that would suggest, wouldn't it, that they have literally been held underground in tunnels for this whole time?
Of course, it is very difficult. They were all the tunnels, of course.
The airstrikes going on around them, the fighting, and those little kids, little Abigail, 3 years old when she was taken hostage. Elderly people, we can see, I think that's Elma we're looking at, Elma Abraham, the lady who, I'm not sure if that's who we're looking at, but, elderly people, a woman in her 80s, and, we're hearing that the conditions that they were held in would have been absolutely horrific.
Of course.
It's hard to see how these little children will ever recover from that.
Laura, even if their physical condition, let's say, is relatively okay, I don't know, some of them not, but most of them, the psychological has been hit maybe for a lifetime. I mean, when you are 4 years or 6 years or 10 years old and you are in captivity of a terrorist group for a month and a half, this you bear your whole life. These children will need to be treated, to be followed for a long time, to see to it that they are not left with this trauma for all their life.
And of course we know that many of them witnessed horrendous scenes of violence. Some of them have lost family members. Abigail is an orphan. Both her parents were murdered on October 7th. We don't even know if she's aware of that or if she can comprehend that.
How do you tell her that? How do you tell her that?
It's heartbreaking.
I mean, they're really heartbreaking. I mean, those are incredible situations we are in. I have never been in such a situation before.
I don't think the world has been in this situation
You are right.
before.
There's never been a
They
hostage
spoke to
crisis.
Israeli psychologists who were meant to deal with these cases, and they say, as scientists, whenever we need to deal with the situation, we go to the books. We learn from precedents. Well, there are no precedents for cases like this of babies and children, toddlers being taken hostage by terror groups
From their homes.
from their beds. That sort of trauma just has no precedent.
Yeah, and some of them have seen their parents being killed before their eyes. I mean, this is something.
And no time to recover.
Sometimes when the world blames us for our action against the Hamas, I ask, where were you on the 7th of October or on the 8th of October when all that happened? How come there was not an outcry immediately? How come you did not get up and come here to show your solidarity with us? On the contrary, we are being blamed.
Well, do you think that when the world watches these images, because this is the headline around the world, the hostages being released, and people will see how tiny those children are, they will, because Hamas, of course, has also denied targeting civilians, taking civilians hostage, which doesn't make sense, of course, when they're now releasing hostages. But do you think people are now going to see with their own eyes, and it will hit home for them? The extent of what they did.
I want to give you I don't know if we talked about that before I came in, about the Prime Minister of Ireland.
Oh yes, Leo Varadkar. Yes,
this idiot who says that she had a nice.
Your words, Avi, not mine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
I don't regret it. Okay.
Well, just for those who haven't seen, because he has been all over social media today. He said he was talking about Emily Hand, who turned 9 in captivity. A little girl was lost. A little girl has been found. In the passive, and a lot of people pointing out, no, Taoiseach, Prime Minister, her parents were murdered. She was taken hostage by Hamas terrorists, and has just been released in a deal which sees, Palestinian prisoners who have tried to commit murders being released.
And did he understand that?
Oh, we don't know. We haven't heard.
We heard an outcry from the Israeli government, but let's
the Israeli government, is calling in the Irish ambassador.
Of course.
Yes, they called the Irish ambassador.
In order to launch a protest.
I do have the tweet from Conor McGregor, the MMA fighter, who's, of course, of the same nationality, saying to the Prime Minister, she was abducted by an evil terrorist organization. What is it with you and your government and your paid for media affiliates constantly downplaying attempts to repress horrific acts that happen to children? You are a disgrace. The day after a stabbing of children in Ireland, no one paper had it on their front cover. We will not forget. A very clear message that not everyone in Ireland really share those views, wanting to undermine.
Some common sense prevails in Ireland.
Those evil acts, both in Ireland and here in Israel.
Well, we have to talk about the media coverage as well. I don't know if you saw Reuters. They said 13 Israeli soldiers were released.
Soldiers?
They said 13 Israeli. They issued a correction.
Okay.
But, once again, not before.
No, but that may be a mistake.
But you also have many.
I want to be lenient towards
you're
them.
being very,
That may have been a mistake.
Well, we don't need to be lenient with the Sky News correspondent who asked the Israeli government spokesman, Eilon Levy, about the Israelis being released versus the Palestinians, comparing the numbers and asking whether that doesn't show that Israel doesn't care about Palestinian lives.
That a Palestinian life is worth less than an Israeli life, because we released 3 terrorists for 1 hostage.
And just another one. I mean, the choice of photo. I think it was the New York Times. They talk about a hostage release or a prisoner exchange, and they're kind of equating these little kids, these 7-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, with people, Palestinians, who have been jailed for trying to stab people, trying to blow up a gas canister at a bus station, actually stabbing people, leaving people with, severe disabilities, and putting their photos side by side. It's like we're living in a parallel universe sometimes.
Really, also the New York Times I read the New York Times. I can see that 90% of the coverage is about the plight in Gaza. You know, every story almost coming printed on the New York Times, on the internet of the New York Times, is a story about Gaza. What about our plight? What about our hostages? What about the people who have lost their home? Those who were murdered, a whole nation suffering. I mean, there is very little about that.
Meanwhile, as we speak about this pause and the return of these hostages, news out of Gaza that Hamas allegedly has given the green light to add 2 to 4 more days of pause in the fighting, allowing...
On top of the 4 days?
Yes.
Right, so we've got one more day. Tomorrow is the last day of the 4 days.
Tomorrow is the last day of the 4 days, so it would be until Friday.
That's what Israel is saying.
Depending whether it'll be 2 or 4 days to allow the release of more hostages. Well, Hamas apparently miraculously have managed to find more Israeli hostages as it was as it needed to find. Well, initially it said it would need the time. It was given the time. It found the time.
I'm hoping we're going to see Raya Otem among them, the mother of Hilah, who was
certainly
supposed
Israel is going to insist on that.
Yeah, but by the way, they were together. Hilah and Raya were together until yesterday or the day before yesterday.
Correct.
And the Hamas separated them. When the agreement was, the written agreement was that children be returned with their parents.
Yeah, they did. They went back on that. And we're also waiting to hear when the Red Cross will access the remaining hostages, because a lot of people are absolutely frantic, not even knowing if their loved ones are still alive, what condition they're in, how they're being held. So that is another important point.
National Security Advisor Jack Sullivan made it very clear today in his interviews that that is indeed a clause in the deal signed between Israel and Hamas, that the Red Cross will have access to all the Israeli hostages that are not set to be released, that are to remain in Gaza. Hamas and Qatar both did not mention that clause, but the Americans assure that this is what was signed, and it is up to the Red Cross and up to Hamas to fulfill this clause in the deal. He says they are to do so by tomorrow. That is the last day of this deal.
So tomorrow, Red Cross workers should be able to...
According to the deal, if you believe that Hamas is going to abide with what it signed.
Yeah, okay. Avi, a final word.
Yeah, you know, the Red Cross is like an insurance policy. Once they have seen somebody, you cannot deny that he is alive. You know, that was in all Israel's wars in the past. We always insisted that the Red Cross see our prisoners in Syria and Egypt, and only then did we know that they are alive, and then the Syrians and the Egyptians had to keep them alive. And this goes the same with those hostages. We want to know who is alive, and that the Hamas keeps them alive.
All right, Avi Pazner, thank you very much indeed, Guy. Thanks to you as well. And just a reminder then, the good news tonight: 13 Israeli women and children are home. Here they are, Ella and Daphne, sisters. They're home. Little Abigail, she's home. Gal, Yuval, Ofri. There you can see their little faces. They're back in Israel tonight with their surviving family members. Stay tuned to I24 News. We'll have all the updates for you next. Stay with us.
This is Breaking News Edition. I'm Benita Levine coming to you live from Tel Aviv. A collective sigh of relief in Israel with confirmation a short while ago that the third group of hostages released from captivity in Gaza is heading home. They are in Israel on the way to local hospitals. The Brodach family, mother Hagar, children Ofri, 10, Yuval, 8, and Oriya, aged 4. The Goldstein Almog family, mother Chen, and children Agam, 17, 11-year-old Gal, and Tal, 9. 84-year-old Elma Avraham, 62-year-old Aviva Siegel, and siblings 14-year-old Daphne and 8-year-old Ella Eliakim. And finally, Avigail Idan. She turned 4 a few days ago while being held hostage by Hamas terrorists. Her parents were killed during that terror rampage in southern Israel on the 7th of October. Avigail was abducted and has been held captive inside Gaza since then. When she gets to the hospital in Israel, she will be running into the arms of her aunt and extended family. And you can actually see, if you look carefully, she is in that vehicle on your screen right now. Now, 3 foreign hostages are also part of the group Hamas handed to the Red Cross in recent hours. And the terror group announcing it's also releasing a Russian-Israeli hostage, 25-year-old Roni Krivol, as a gesture to President Vladimir Putin, making him the first male to be freed. One of the hostages, 84-year-old Elma Avraham, has been airlifted to Soroka Hospital. She is in a serious condition. Right now, we're going to take you live to our Emily Francis. She joins us from Tel Aviv at the site now known as Hostage Square. And Emily, Israeli officials saying 13 Israeli hostages, 1 Russian-Israeli hostage, and 3 foreigners have been handed over to the Red Cross earlier. They're now in Israel on their way to hospitals in the country. What is the reaction there at Hostage Square?
Listen, a collective sigh of relief. I mean, for the most part, today has been somewhat calm because everybody is literally at home, glued to the television, watching this miracle unfold. But right now, people are gathering inside a media tent where former Chief Rabbi Meir Lau is speaking and doing a very special bracha. There's a Torah scroll here. You can see, I'm just going to step out of the shot, and you can see a little bit. I know there was a big crowd, but really a time to pray. This is the first time we've seen something like this. It's been going on for about a half an hour. They have challah, they have wine, and just praying and giving gratitude for, you know, like they said, for Hashem granting this opportunity to release these hostages. And we're all, of course, continuing to pray for the hostages that are remaining in custody in Gaza. A little bit more information about some of the hostages that are released that just came from the hostages, the Missing Family and Hostages Forum. Hagar Brodach, 39 years old, a sensitive and patient soul brimming with a captivating sense of humor. Ofri Brodach, 10 years old, birthday October 8th. She's musical, plays guitar. I mean, the descriptions in the bios goes on and on and on. I wish I had more time to be able to read you the beautiful stories of who these people are who are coming home now to a warm embrace, not only to their own individual families, but to the entire country. That's all for now. Benita, back to you in the studio.
Live from Tel Aviv, thank you very much, our Emily Francis. One can only imagine what the families are going through right now. Now it's day 3 of the truce and hostage release deal brokered by Qatar, Egypt and the US. Terms of the deal have already been broken by Hamas. Children, siblings and their parents were supposed to be freed together, but early this morning, 13-year-old Hila Rotem Shoshani came home without her mother, even though she says they were held captive together up until 2 days before she was released. And 21-year-old Maya Regev was released on crutches without her brother Itai. She had been shot and wounded at the Nova Music Festival and is today having surgery in Israel. Now, the deal is supposed to see 50 Israeli children and women freed from captivity in groups during the 4-day truce. It also involves aid trucks being sent into Gaza and the release of Palestinian security prisoners, women and teenagers who have tried to kill Israelis. After the first two groups of hostages arrived in Israel over the past 2 days, emotional reunions taking place at local hospitals. Look at those moments on your screen right now. The nation, of course, is hoping to see similar scenes when the newest group of freed hostages is reunited with their loved ones. So now for more, we're going to be crossing to our correspondent Zach Anders, and he joins us from close to Hatzirim base. So the nation holding its breath, obviously relieved, joyful to hear the good news. The next set group of hostages heading back to Israel. Where exactly are they? Talk us through the process right now, Zach.
Well, some of the images that you saw on your screen of them passing our position towards Hatzerim Air Base, they're now going to arrive on the base. They may have already done so, but the procession was moving quite slowly because there were so many people along the road, well-wishers that were waving Israeli flags, and the convoy slowed down, was blowing their horn, and it was a quite touching moment. There were many people that were crying as they saw this scene go by. I was able to see inside the window of the vans and look at a few of the hostages, and they were smiling. They saw the crowd, they were smiling with what they saw, and they were waving back at the people on the side of the road, waving at them. They're on their way to the airbase now. They'll arrive, they'll get their first chance at a change of clothes, a shower. They're going to also receive further medical care. We saw inside the van that there were additional staff. There was what looks like IDF soldiers, but also doctors as well that were tending to them. But as far as we have been told, they don't need immediate medical attention. They're still going to receive some early psychological staff will be on hand at the base to provide some sort of debrief. They're then going to board those helicopters when they feel ready and head towards hospitals in Tel Aviv, and that will be the moment that we saw like the last 2 days where they'll finally get to meet their family. You'll remember that video that's all over the internet right now of them inside the hospital corridor running to be with their loved ones. That's going to be the reunification moment.
Certainly a reunion moment the whole country is waiting to see. For now, thank you very much, correspondent Zach Anders. More to come from Zach in the coming hours. And now it's a pleasure to welcome to studio Major General in the Reserves, Eitan Dangot, former military secretary to 3 Israeli defense ministers and former coordinator of government activities in the Palestinian territories in the IDF. Political commentator Daniel Sheikh, the former Israeli ambassador to France, and our senior defense correspondent Jonathan Regev. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. What a momentous time in this war. What a moment. So many emotions. I'm going to start with you, Eitan, because this latest group of hostages is on its way to hospitals. They are in Israel. This is a huge moment. It's a collective sigh of relief. Your thoughts?
First of all, a very warm and happy evening from the fact that we have the third group that is coming to Israel. It was after what we faced yesterday. It has started today with something that shows like there will be some problems, but at the fact they came, and they came very in the short way. You see, IDF is deployed on the north part of Gaza, and it was used to bring them back. What is the main warm thing here is that you see here 2 mothers with 3 children, another couple of brother and sister together, or 2 sisters, and you see 2 elders and another civilian. This is the evening of the children, and above the top of it is the child, the girl that lost her parents.
Abigail Idan, the heart of the nation waiting for her.
And she is like a symbol, and it's something to come and to hug everybody together, and to be on one day with a big smile. On the other hand, you have to remember that there is a lot of sadness. First of all, we have to continue to make all the efforts to release all the other hostages. Doesn't matter, soldiers, female, men, other children and other men. We cannot agree for such a division they are doing, and we have to work for it each second as it is been now and today, and tomorrow will be taken, I believe, a very important decision about the continuing or not for another 1, 2, 3 days. We will see it. We can talk about it later. Secondly, don't forget, everybody of us, about the tragic on the 7th, and we have thousands of soldiers that are deployed in Gaza, risking their life, continue to be in readiness, and they are one of the main reasons that come from love, from understanding, for giving themselves the first step, lost life of soldiers as well, and they are there to help us to bring back all the others in the future.
We're going to unpack a lot more of what you've been talking about, but talking of the children who are coming home, let's go to our correspondent Pierre Steckelbach. She's at the Schneider Children's Medical Center in Israel. And Pierre, the nation waiting to see those scenes that we saw unfolding over the weekend, children being reunited with their families after all the horrors they've endured over the last 7 weeks. What is happening there? Talk us through what you are seeing and hearing at that hospital.
Right, Benita, the hospital is prepared to receive at least some of those hostages that were released tonight. Schneider Hospital has also received some of the first hostages that were released on Friday. Now, they will be released, or they will be delivered to 3 different hospitals tonight, which is Wolfson in Holon and also Sheba in Ramat Gan, and this one, Schneider, here in Petah Tikva. We are hearing that one severely injured elderly woman has already been brought to hospital in Beersheba because of the severity of her injuries. But here in Schneider, everyone is really waiting. We do see a lot of journalists, and of course the family members have also arrived to that hospital. Now, I just spoke to the aunt of Daphna and Ella Eliakim, 15 and 8 years old, who have been held hostage and who we know are now on their way to that hospital. There are still, of course, all those hostages that have been released in the south of Israel, but they will get on a helicopter soon and fly here. And the aunt is really waiting for them, and she was full of emotions. Of course, she was crying because she's so happy that her nieces will be back very soon. She didn't had the chance to speak to them yet, but she saw images of them in the south of Israel, and that really made her feel, of course, very emotional, very thankful that at least her family members it's only a matter of hours that she will be able to really hug them. But she said, and this is what you are hearing from many of those family members of the hostages, that of course they will not give up until the last hostage is freed, and that they do still feel sad for those who cannot really hug their family members yet. But she emphasized how thankful she is that her nieces are back, but she's also worried about their medical condition, because this is something that we do not really know about, and what conditions these hostages are getting back to us. And this is why the first stop after the release is hospitals, because here they will be examined, of course, physically, but also psychologically. Doctors are waiting, and also experts in psychology and also in child psychology, because 7 weeks of captivity, of course, impact a person. Doctors here do expect them to have severe trauma, especially when we speak about the children. So this is why they will be received in hospitals first of all, and this is also where they will be physically be reuniting, as you mentioned, Benita, with their families. They have been notified that they should come to those hospitals that I just mentioned. As I just mentioned, some of the family members are already here, and this is where only in a matter of hours we expect they will see their loved ones again. And from what we hear from both this hospital and also Sheba Medical Center is that some of the hostages that have been brought back yesterday and also the day before yesterday will already be able to go home, but this is not where the physical or medical care stops, because of course the psychological care will take a lot of time. And what we've been hearing from experts is that this needs to be done in the hostages' pace, especially when we speak about children. They will be accommodated by psychologists for a long period of time, and that everything should be done in their own pace. Of course, this is also very, very individual and personal how these people are feeling right now, but especially when we speak about children, they are expected to need a lot of attention and psychological care as well. And this is here now the first station, if you will, the first place where they will be examined and where they will reunite with their families. And everyone is waiting for that moment here, Benita.
One can only imagine what those families are feeling right now, waiting to see exactly what is going to unfold, hopefully very soon. You spoke about the psychological treatment. There's also physical treatment. We know 21-year-old Maya Regev, we saw her coming out. She was one of the first of the hostages to have to undergo surgery. She was shot at the music festival on the 7th of October. We saw her on crutches 50 days later when she was freed in the early hours of that morning. And we also know that she is having to have had surgery, and as soon as we know her condition, we will of course update you. It was quite something to see a young woman coming out of captivity on crutches, knowing that she was wounded on the 7th of October. It's 7 weeks later. For now, thank you to our correspondent Pierre Steckelbach from Schneider Children's Medical Center. More to come from Pierre in the coming hours. Back to our studio, and I want to pick up on the concept that we were talking about a short while ago, Daniel Sheck, and that is the heart-wrenching wait for the families. Tears in our eyes as we saw over the weekend, children running up to their relatives. Many of them don't even know what has happened to their families, their homes, their communities in the last 7 weeks. You have been intimately involved with the organizations helping and supporting these families. What is your sense right now at this moment?
Well, first of all, I have to say that I'm very happy that that they didn't have to live through the emotional roller coaster of yesterday, and that things went smoothly. And I hope that the last day of this first round of agreements for exchanges of hostages against prisoners and against truce will finish smoothly, and possibly we will be able to obtain more liberations if this deal is indeed extended, as I hope it will be. You know, spending so much time with many of those families, you have a feeling that you've sort of known, that you're beginning to know the hostages, although obviously you've never met them. So you share with their joy, and you share with their grief and with their excitement. And, you know, Friday night, nobody planned this. It was the first day of the exchange, but suddenly dozens of people, of volunteers from the Forum of Families, just congregated to our offices, and we spent the evening together watching what's going on. Many other families came, and I keep repeating, the thing that touches me most, and it literally brings tears to my eyes often, is these families, both those who have a happy ending, like the families of these last days who were seeing their loved ones coming back, but even those who do not have a happy ending and who have had to recognize that their loved ones are no longer hostages, but they are killed.
They're grieving.
Both of them say the same thing. We will get over the first days of emotional intensity, and we will come back to the forum to continue the fight and to support the other families until the very last of the hostages is released.
We keep on hearing that again and again on the channel. We're speaking to relatives of the hostages, and they all say exactly that. It's not over until all the hostages are home. Jonathan Regev, we've been talking about the fact that the process in terms of the hostage release in the first 2 days, there were many delays. It was very frustrating and an agonizing wait for the relatives. Today was slightly different because the hostages came through the Karni crossing. Why exactly is that? What is your take on what is unfolding right now?
First, whatever I'm going to say is not official. There's nothing official. It's just my own assessment, but maybe something we can learn about the whereabouts of the hostages, because let's remember there are still roughly around 170, 180 hostages that need to be brought back. Now, those who came today came from the communities of Kfar Aza and Nahal Oz, both of them in the central part of the Gaza border area, and both they all came back through the Karni crossing, which is very close to their home. It is very close. It's right next to Nahal Oz, very close to Kfar Aza. Therefore, we can assume.
I'm going to stop you right now because Daniel Hagari, the IDF spokesperson, is about to speak.
Today, Hagar, Ofri, Yuval, Uriah, Chen, Agam, Gal, Tal, Daphna, Ella, Elma, Aviva, Ron, and Abigail have returned home. Abigail Idan, 4 years old, an orphaned from both her parents who were murdered by the murderous Hamas terror group. She's a hero, and she's the living proof that fighting the Hamas terror group is a justified war. It is war against a cruel and evil enemy. Like Abigail, to each of the hostages, there is a relative who is murdered or being held hostage. It is unbearable pain. Alma, who was returned to us in a serious condition, was immediately evacuated by helicopter to the hospital where she's being treated. She was taken by IDF troops from the Gaza area. For medical reasons, IDF took some of them through the central area of the Gaza Strip with full coordination from the Egyptians. 4 hostages, among them 1 Israeli and 3 Thais, were returned through the Rafah crossing in Egypt. After initial medical assessment, they have arrived at the moment at the Hatzerim Air Force Base, and from there to the hospitals where their families and loved ones await them. It is an exciting day, but we do not forget for one moment the hostages that are already 51 days in captivity by the murderous terror group Hamas. The work will not be complete until they're all returned home. This is the moral duty of all IDF soldiers and commanders, together with the security bodies. The IDF readies for the next stages of the fighting. The Chief of Staff has today approved plans for the next stages of the war. A few weeks ago, I updated you about a significant airstrike that the Hamas attempted to hide. Today, we can confirm that the IDF and the Shin Bet have taken down 5 senior Hamas commanders in Gaza. All had key roles in the group that operated against the State of Israel and also part of the October 7th massacre. In recent days, we have published new guidelines for the home front. They include some easing of the guidelines. We maintain vigilance and even at this time continue to follow the guidelines that are updated every day. Questions? Is Israel prepared for the renewal of the fighting? And is the fact that many Palestinians have moved from south to north will make it difficult for the IDF? We are set for the next stages of the fighting. Our forces are executing preparations, reinforcement, and with the approval of the next stages of the plans, even if we need to do so tomorrow, we're ready. But as long as we can release hostages back from captivity of Hamas, we will do so. That with regard to the rest of the fighting. As for the movement from south to north, I don't know the information. There are many civilians. The IDF is prepared and manages to secure the safety of our troops and the lines that we have set. The hostages were released from the northern part of the Gaza Strip, where we are in control. Are there hostages next to the IDF? We have
IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari taking questions there after his daily briefing. Day 51 of the war, as the nation waits to see the next group of hostages getting back to those hospitals in Israel. They are in the country. We wait to see when they get from the Hatzerim base back safely home. Jonathan Regev, main takeaways there. Certainly plans are in place.
Plans are in place, yes, to continue the fighting. The IDF is ready. We heard it from Daniel Hagari, IDF spokesman now. We heard it also from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu earlier today in Gaza, and we heard it from Defense Minister Yoav Gallant yesterday in Gaza. So plans are set for the continuation of the fighting, yes, but Daniel Hagari also said we will be considering to extend the temporary ceasefire as long as we keep on bringing back hostages. Pretty much the same things as US President Joe Biden said about an hour ago. He said, I think the ceasefire should go on as long as hostages come back. Of course, there's another side to the story, which is Hamas. But I think they can provide another 40, another 50 hostages at least, the women and children and elderly. Therefore, will there be an extension? We don't know, but it seems as if the answer is going to be yes.
Something we're going to unpack in a very short while, but right now we are taking a very short break. Our breaking news edition continues in just 2 minutes, so don't go anywhere. You are looking at images on your screen. The third group of hostages on their way home back to Israeli hospitals. We're tracking all the developments as they happen, so stay tuned to I24 News Breaking News Edition.
I24 News Channel, broadcasting from Israel, with dozens of correspondents throughout the world, brings the truth from Israel to hundreds of millions of people in scores of countries.
Completely gunned down in their beds.
De la frontière qui sépare Israël, the state of emergency and war in Israel. Bringing Israel's story to the world. I24 News Channels, now on Hot.
How you know whose stuff this is? Shift the power! Shift the power!
Back to our breaking news coverage, and it's a collective sigh of relief in Israel with confirmation a short while ago that the third group of hostages released from captivity in Gaza is heading home. They are about to fly from the Hatzirim base to local hospitals. Now, for the latest, let's go back to Tel Aviv, and we're joined once again by our Emily Francis. She's at the site now known as Hostages Square. Emily, what's the latest?
Hi, Benita. Obviously, people here are very happy that the hostages, the next group of hostages, are back in Israel. And now there's a very special Rabbi Ehrman, who has been doing a special service here for not only many people that are here just supporting what's happening, but also some of the families. So I'm going to get out of the shot. This has been about an hour-long special prayer. Even though it's not Shabbat, there's challah, there's wine, and they're giving very special blessings, not only for the miracle of the return of these hostages. Hold on, I'm here. Listen to this.
שישובו במהרה לביתם בריאים ושלמים. לשלום חיילי צה"ל, שילכו לשלום ויחזרו לשלום. ולזכות עם ישראל כולו. בואו, תבינו. לא היה מצב כזה בעם ישראל. אנחנו לא יודעים, אנחנו לא מבינים. אבל דבר אחד יכול להושיע את עם ישראל. אם אנחנו נתלכד יחד, אנחנו נמשיך באחדות העצומה הזו.
So for those of you watching that don't understand Hebrew, he's saying Am Yisrael has never seen anything like this. Hazman Hazeh, Amen. This time, Amen. So also some of the families that have hostages still held in Gaza also got a special blessing from the rabbi. And earlier this evening, I did speak to the cousins of one of the hostages who suffers from colitis, a hostage we've been hearing a lot about. And here's what they had to say.
We are happy for every hostage who is released. We are happy for their families. Omer is 22 years old and he is not currently on the list. He is a man, but he is a man with serious illness. We pray and hope that the next releases will bring the sick and the wounded. They need to be taken care of. Omer needs to be taken care of.
And it's such an important point that we keep on hearing so many relatives saying even if they are rejoicing over having their loved ones back, they cannot rest until all hostages are safe and are home. Our hearts are with all the families. Emily Francis, what more can you tell us about what people there are saying? We heard the prayers, we can feel the atmosphere even from here. Give us a sense of what the families have been saying to you.
Come back. Listen, the families are obviously relieved. They're smiling, but a lot of the families here are families that have sons and men in their families that are still held hostage. But the incredible thing that is showing the spirit of Am Yisrael is that they know that even though their children and their loved ones are not going to be the ones coming back as this original 50, they are happy and they are joyful with all of Israel for those who are coming home. A silver lining, a sense of hope. But again, no one is going to give up and no one is going to stop until all the hostages come home.
Thank you so much. That is our Emily Francis live from Tel Aviv. Thank you so much, Emily. And back to studio, and I want to pick up on what we were discussing a little bit earlier before the break, and Eitan, specifically about the next plan of action from the IDF. We know at the moment the truce is a 4-day truce, but it was alluded to in the press conference with Daniel Hagari just moments ago. It could be extended if it means that more hostages will get home safely. What is your take? What are the risks involved? Is it a good idea?
I think that we are already has entered to the very sensitive 34 or even 30 hours about the future on this war, on the immediate timing. What does it mean? It means that one of the principles that were agreed at the beginning, that Israel agreed to opportunity of continuing of release of prisoners for each day and to give for it silence or what we call a ceasefire, we identify that the plan that has arrived to Israel yesterday in Shabbat from Qatar, that I think was already the first sign to show off the continuing of some suggested negotiation. Secondly, you are aware about the efforts that the operators around us, Egypt, Qatar, are doing in order to create situation of continuing of this situation. The third is, you heard already the President Biden, a very close and good friend, that says it's need to be continuing on releasing, but I hope it will be done. It means that the Americans are giving very large umbrella to what's going here, I think also support. Today there is a war cabinet meeting that will, I think it's very important for the few hours and coming future. Meanwhile, I think three main decision or subject has to be discussed and planned. First of all, in any case, continuing of the war, whether it's going to the regular plan, whether we are going to surprise, to change, this is on the shoulders of IDF commanders. Secondly, the second meaning is for the day after. We have to start to talk about the day after. I mean, while we will succeed in the goal on moving aside Hamas entity, Hamas power as a terror organization, what will be the next or the next two steps? Who will be the meanwhile operating the civil activities, and what will be the next step? And above it, a very big question mark about the Palestinian authorities. The third question will be, during the coming days, and tense they're supposed to be, how the IDF on readiness in order to change immediately is deployment from defensive readiness to defensive offensive during his readiness. But the main part, if you are my assess, that there is a big chance, and I support it personally, to continue with each opportunity to release more and more. We have to do it, but one main remark, we have to do it with the end of the story of all the hostages, including soldiers and female, and making the agreement completely. That is something that I believe, as I know the cheaters, the butchers of Hamas, they will not agree, because they would like to hold all the time something that they will try with it to make a game changer to their situation.
And certainly it's something that's being raised all the time, and that is the fact that the deal needs to be adhered to meticulously, and that families need to come back together, something that has already been transgressed. I want to pick up first, though, on these images. This is Maya Regev. We spoke about her earlier on in the broadcast, 21 years old. She is the first of the hostages to have to undergo surgery. She was shot at the music festival on the 7th of October. We saw her on crutches 50 days later when she was freed in the early hours of this morning. So here you are looking, she is being reunited with her family members inside hospital. She is having to have surgery. Obviously, the injury is something that happened 7 weeks ago. It's obviously not clear what kind of care she had while she was in captivity. One can only wonder. And right now she has the top specialists in the country working on her, no doubt, to make sure that she is able to go home where she belongs. What a moment. And Daniel Sheck, you know all these families so well. You've been dealing with them. Another layer of the trauma. A child comes home and she has to go to surgery.
Well, that's we're aware that many of the hostages could be injured. We knew that many of them have medical conditions, preconditions that we could know of, and we informed the Red Cross of a while ago. I'm glad to see that Maya Regev's injuries are not serious and are not life-threatening. And I have to say that it is also a relief for the remaining families to see that although the trauma remains the trauma, by and large, the hostages are coming home in a decent condition, decent physical condition. And I'm sure that's reassuring for the families, although, I mean, it doesn't guarantee that everybody enjoys that relatively good treatment, certainly not if it will go on for a long time. And that's why one has to consider this not as the hostage deal, but as the first deal for hostages, not the hostages. And immediately after the conclusion of this round, there needs to be efforts have to start for the next round. I don't know if it will be under the same conditions, By the way, I'll just mention that the Forum of Families has requested a meeting with the Qatari delegation that has landed in Israel yesterday,
Right.
Asking to meet directly with them. The deal that the Qataris are brokering concerns these people directly, and they would like to voice their concerns and to hear directly from the horse's mouth what the next steps could be. We're still waiting for a reply.
Well, let's see if that meeting does, in fact, take place. Eitan.
I want to add something, emotion. I call it the night of the children. You see the group of the children, and if you're looking, there is 8 children, if I'm not mistaken, that are coming to something with happiness and sadness. The 3 of Goldstein Almog family are coming and don't know whether they are aware that they lost their father and they lost their elder sister. The 2 sisters that are returning lost their father as well, and Avigail lost her parents, the 4 years old child. So you see how this situation with happiness and with a lot of sadness show you what is the mission to tell these children tonight or tomorrow what will be and how to bring them. And this is the symbol of all the situation, of all the circles, but above all, to see a child returning back home for us after he has been taken. I think it's the most important time for this tragic that happened, besides the fact that we have very soon to return back for our future, for our fighting, for our honor, for our safety, to complete the mission and the goal.
We have a new development just in. Hamas saying it's seeking to extend the truce. Jonathan Regev, but there are details. Tell us more.
Yes, they're saying they want to extend the truce, and they say that they can provide more hostages based on the humanitarian agreement that has been reached. That's, of course, a very vague expression. The conditions set by Israel when the original truce was announced is that Israel will be willing to extend the truce, maybe even up to 10 days, as long as every day brings with it 10 more hostages. If Hamas is speaking of 4 more days, that would mean 40 more hostages. Can they provide it? I think the answer is yes. I think so. If we're speaking of some 50 or so in the first stage, the other stage would mean another 40. I think, if I remember correctly, there was a number of people spoke of 98 women and children before this whole process began. If Hamas is able to put their hands on everybody, and I think that they do, therefore it can be extended. I don't think anyone here will be surprised if I say that the army is not very happy with the fact that they had to stop. The army was in a strong momentum pushing into Gaza, and yet I think that almost everybody at the army understands that this is a price worth paying for the images that we're seeing of every day of up until now 40 Israelis coming back. If we can get if after tomorrow, if Israel gets 10 or 11 or 13, I don't know exactly how many hostages will come hopefully tomorrow, but if Israel can get another 40 hostages, then as difficult as this price is, I think there's a general understanding that this is a price worth paying for the hostages to be back.
As you say, the country wants to see more and more of those images of families being united after 7 weeks of sheer horror. Talking about what could happen next, let's take a listen to Benjamin Netanyahu. The Israeli Prime Minister was in northern Gaza earlier sharing this message. Let's take a listen.
We are here in Gaza with our heroic fighters. We make every effort to return our abductees, and eventually we will return them all. We have 3 goals for this war: eliminate Hamas, return all our abductees, and ensure that Gaza does not become a threat to the state of Israel again. I am here to say to my friends here, to the fighters here, who tell me the same things, and I repeat this to you, citizens of Israel: we continue until the end, until victory. victory. Nothing will stop us, and we are convinced that we have the power, the strength, the will, and the determination to achieve all the war's goals, and we will.
And we're going to be unpacking more about that message very shortly. But right now, we want to go back to our correspondent, Zach Anders, and he joins us from Hatzirim base. What is the latest there? What can you tell us, Zach?
Well, we're hearing that they have made it to the base and are anticipating that flight to Tel Aviv here soon via helicopter. They are going to get that opportunity to reunite with their families once they reach the hospital. Some of them may be booked for longer term care inside the hospital. That will be evaluated once they reach there. Of course, there was the one hostage, the 84-year-old woman who was immediately flown for care. We are told that her condition was serious, but we have not received an update since they flew her to the nearest hospital. The additional hostages I'm hearing from sources inside the IDF appear to be in good condition and in good spirits as they made their way to the airbase. But that's where the real initial evaluation is going to begin. The first task was to transport them away from the Rafah crossing and get them to that airbase where there'll be more staff and better attention.
As you say, 84-year-old Elma Avraham airlifted to Soroka Hospital earlier. The last we are hearing is that she was in serious condition. Of course, we will have more updates as they emerge. Zach, we know in total now 58 civilian hostages have been released so far, including Israelis and foreign nationals. The next group should be coming through tomorrow, all being well. And then what is likely to happen next? We've been discussing here in studio the possibility of an extension to the truce. Talk us through practically what it could mean for hopefully more hostages.
And that's what the Biden administration and it appears Qatar as well are pushing for, an additional few days of this ceasefire, which has held. Day 3 of the ceasefire has held. That's an important milestone considering the amount of effort and energy that has to go into facilitating both sides through this brutal engagement over the last 40-plus days to get both sides to pull apart and to stop the fighting. This seems to be a major breakthrough. And the Biden administration and the mediator, of course, Qatar, wants to capitalize on this success so far and keep this continuing. The negotiations that, of course, we're not privy to will be happening with, you would imagine, the same incentives as there has presently been, with the number of Palestinian prisoners included in the swap necessary to make this happen. But we are seeing more and more comments on social media from residents inside Gaza, the people of Gaza, posting more and more about the hostage exchange and what that means and what they're seeing. Many of them have been posting, of course, this is anecdotal just based on the social media that is getting out there, but many of them are posting about the such a welcome change to the ability to get the aid in through the Rafah crossing. There appears to now be fresh fruit that's made it to markets, and people can finally begin to have full, real meals. And so it does appear that there has been some sort of momentum shift inside Gaza as well for the humanitarian situation for them. Only time will tell where the negotiations take this from here. Of course, the Israeli side are relishing this opportunity to see the hostages returned. We're going to see more women and children tomorrow, but then there's still so many men. Men are going to be remaining in captivity inside Gaza, and that turns this negotiation into a different tenor.
Thank you so much, correspondent Zach Anders. More to come from Zach, of course, in the coming hours. Appreciate the update. Daniel Sheikh, I want to pick up on this issue we're discussing right now. The possibility of a truce being extended could mean more hostages coming home. But Hamas has to locate those hostages. What do you know about the verification process? We are hearing it's only a day in advance that families are hearing that their loved ones may be coming home. So would the families believe that there could be an ability by Hamas to locate that many more hostages? Your take?
I'm like Jonathan Regev, I'm convinced that the answer is yes. And in any event, I mean, Hamas claims to be in charge of the Gaza Strip, so they are the authority and they are responsible for the well-being of the hostages. I'd just like to say a word about 84-year-old Alma Abraham. We've been saying all along that, of course, the objective is the release of all the hostages, but the intermediate, most urgent one is access and medical access to all the hostages. Some of them are very fragile, and some of them may have life-threatening illnesses, chronic diseases. They need special medication, and I would not be surprised if the case of Alma Abraham is one of those, that she came in a fragile condition, an 84-year-old woman, and she was not treated properly, and she came back in serious condition and had to be airlifted immediately to a hospital. Hopefully she will be okay.
An absolute travesty to think that the Red Cross has not been able to get that access.
By the way, that is supposed to be part of the agreement.
Exactly.
It's sort of been watered down, but I personally think it's no less important than the actual release of the people is the access for the Red Cross, a credible list of the hostages and visitation rights for the Red Cross.
Daniel, because you've been dealing so intimately with the families and the support that the nation has been given them, I want your take, what you've heard about the playing of games. We looked at images of hostages waving. Next to them is a man with a mask and a gun holding onto a child. The child has been through enough without having to be escorted by an armed man in a mask into a van and then be instructed to wave. What do you make of that, and what is your sense of the way that is perceived by the world? What is your take on that shenanigans, so to speak?
I can only hope that nobody falls into this ridiculous trap. It's infuriating to see these attempts to sort of absolve themselves of the crimes of October 7th by I mean, I'm glad that they treated these people humanely, but they shouldn't have touched them to begin with. None of these people were supposed to be in captivity to begin with. So I'm really not impressed, and I'm sure that the families and hopefully the rest of the world understand that treating a hostage you shouldn't have taken to begin with humanely doesn't absolve you of mistreating and killing others on October 7th.
The most absurd of images. We were looking there inside a Red Cross van. You've got foreign workers smiling and giving a thumbs up to armed terrorists outside who have just helped them get into a van.
You can imagine what they were told before they boarded these cars, that they'd better do a thumbs up, otherwise they will have a thumbs down.
One can only imagine. Eitan.
I think that the fact that the stream should be divided to two, to those who are living, and the pictures we saw on the 7th or the 8th of October that are shown all over, this is the story. This is the story of the theater of such a butchers. We have to continue and to put it to the world in the face. Even many millions are not like to see it and like to see such a guy with covered his face, making on his hand. They are the killers. They are the blood of the children that has been murdered will be on their hands and their mind, from my point of view, for generations. And this organization is the risk, not even for Israel and from other parts of the world that are now putting their head on the ground in order not to watch and to see what's going to be in their place in a few years.
Jonathan, I want to bring you in on that point because, as Zach was describing as well, at the same time as this is all unfolding, Palestinian security prisoners are being released and are being taken where and exactly what have they done to have been in jails in the first place?
We call them terrorists with no blood on their hand. The only reason there's no blood on their hand is because they were unsuccessful. That's the only reason. They tried to murder Israelis, but they were unsuccessful because they were stopped on time. That's the only reason why they're not murderers, but just attempted murderers. That is the only reason. Minors and women kill. So this is the case, and now they're out again. I have to say that the price that Israel is paying in terrorists, I hate to see it, but it's not very high. Certainly less than anything we've seen. We only speak of the Shalit deal because that's the biggest deal that we have on the minds. 1,027 terrorists released for one soldier. But if we go back, there was a Jibril case in 1985. Back then, more than 1,000 terrorists for 3 soldiers. So the Israeli public has been accustomed to a very high number of terrorists for a small number of Israelis. The case now is different. 1 for 3 is clearly a price that the Israeli society can live with. And if we have 40 or 50 more people coming, I think that the Israeli society will be willing to pay that price of 150 more. I call them terrorists, blood on their hand or not, they're terrorists loud and clear. Regarding the process, they're taken to the Ofer prison, which is between Jerusalem and Ramallah, right next to the Bitunia checkpoint. And once there's verification that all of the Israeli hostages are in Israeli territory, that is when they're released through Bitunia to the West Bank, and those who live in East Jerusalem are taken to East Jerusalem because, let's remember, they're Israeli residents.
And something we will unpack as well very shortly. Jonathan Regev, thank you so much. You will be staying with us. Eitan Dangot also staying with us. Daniel Sheikh, thank you very much for your insight. As always, appreciate you being here for this breaking news edition. A quick break. We're back in 2 minutes. Stay tuned.
Israel is at war. Make an investment in Israel bonds. It is the most powerful and direct way to stand with Israel. Visit israelbonds.com and invest now.
Made for Me, a unique concept in Israel. Custom-made men's fashion to your measurements. Made for Me, designer of all your events. Schedule your appointment at www.madeforme.co.il.